This video is now in session, and Germany will have an election in just 2 days from now. So this is being recorded on September 24th, 2021, and the election is happening on 26th of September 2021. So this election is something that happens regularly for Germany, happens every 4 years, and it decides the prime minister, or I guess in this case, the Chancellor of Germany, as well as whoever gets the plurality in the Bundestag, which is essentially the parliament of Germany. So for this election, there are 6 major parties and 6 major candidates / dual candidacies that are happening. But a lot has changed over the months, and it's primarily because no one really knows who to vote for in Germany. For Germany, they have gone through many candidates at this point throughout this election. First, they started off with Armin Laschet, or I guess they didn't even start off with Armin Laschet. They started off with Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, who was supposed to be the successor to Angela Merkel as the leader of the Christian Democratic Union. But the problem was she faced a political scandal because of the AFD, of a scandal related to the AFD and a coalition that involved them. So she resigned, and Armin Laschet became the new successor. So Armin Laschet was supposed to be the heir to the Angela Merkel throne, or I guess the chancellorship. But in recent months, that has changed. We see here in the polls that for a brief period, Annalena Baerbock, the leader of the Green Party, was able to match the CDU-CSU, and then that started going down. And then once again in April, it started going back up for the Green Party, and then it went back down. But now there's a new party, the SPD, which for this entire election had not been polling that strongly, has now polled ahead with just a couple of days left, with just 2 days left until the election. And the main reason why these kinds of surges are happening is because Armin Laschet is not a good candidate. Armin Laschet, he is somewhat similar to Michael Dukakis, very policy oriented, which is not a bad thing by itself, but very disinterested in the emotional and the personal aspect that comes with politics, because when you are a politician, you not only have to create policy, but you also have to be able to resonate with your constituency, and Armin Laschet has not been able to establish that. Because of that, and also the other thing is that this year the CDU-CSU doesn't have a very clear manifesto, especially when compared to every other party's manifesto, because every party's manifesto this year has largely been the same thing. There are some variations from the political extremes like the AFD and the left, but if we're looking at the mainstream party, it's been relatively the same. So for Armin Laschet, he has to find a way to differentiate himself, and he hasn't. So because of that, people have moved to Annalena Baerbock. They tried out Baerbock and the Green Party, and that's why they gave her a lead in the polls. But then scandals started arising about her and her history of plagiarizing. And her suffering from politician syndrome. Politician syndrome is a colloquial way of saying trying to inflate your credentials because you're a politician. It's very regularly seen in politics, with people trying to make themselves seem better than they truly are. So that's what Baerbock did, and then she got scandals for it, and because of that, she started going back down in the polls. So that's when Armin Laschet went back up, because the CDU-CSU is the incumbent party. But now Olaf Scholz is starting to lead, because again, Laschet has not been able to kind of inspire the nation. And right now, COVID cases are going up in Germany, and a lot of issues are arising in Germany that make a lot of people more likely to vote for the SPD. Even though Olaf Scholz is kind of like Armin Laschet, he is not really emotionally tied to the public of Germany, and he is very disinterested from what most Germans think of him, from how he I guess, portrays himself in the German public. But people are choosing the SPD because they don't want the CDU-CSU anymore, since for the past 2 decades, Angela Merkel has been the leader and has been the Chancellor of Germany. Ever since 2005, she has led Germany, and that means she has been leading for around 16 years. That's a very long time to be the Chancellor of Germany, and the longer you are as a Chancellor, the more baggage you will have to hold. And that's what Angela Merkel has realized since 2015 with the refugee crisis that was going on in Europe. That kind of removed her invincibility, and that started a downfall in her popularity. If we look at the 2017 election, the CDU-CSU party lost 65 seats, and the AfD and alternative parties like the FDP won additional seats, and gained seats from the two mainstream parties. So we're not seeing that kind of thing happen in this election, primarily because there has been a reining in of the AfD and the left. But for the CDU-CSU, they've been in power for 16 years, and just like Barack Obama and the Democrats, even though people still may like Angela Merkel, they want someone new. They want someone fresh, and that's pretty natural for a lot of people that's pretty natural in terms of politics, which is that if there has been a reigning party that has been ruling for some time, then the other party starts to have an advantage, and the SPD in this case is starting to have an advantage. And if we look at the polls, the SPD is currently ahead with around 25% of the vote. Meanwhile, the CDU-CSU coalition has around 20% of the vote. Now, this lead has been plateauing in the days coming up to the election, but the SPD at this moment seems like they're going to gain seats no matter what happens with the polls, and it seems likely that Scholz will end up with the plurality of the seats in Germany. Even though he may not win the majority of the seats, he will almost, at this point, it seems more increasingly likely that Scholz will have a plurality of the seats in Germany, and that means he will have to establish a coalition with another party. But we have not really seen an SPD rule in some time. If we keep going back, the last time this SPD led was in 2004. After the 2005 election, the CDU-CSU has been in power for a very long time. But no matter what happens, all of these candidates are really not inspirational for any Germans. And German politics is much different from the U.S. politics, which is that U.S. politics, there's a clear divide between left and right issues. But when it comes to Germany and their politics, there isn't as big of a divide that we see. The SPD, even though they are center left, and even though they range from center left to left wing, Olaf Scholz is a center-right when it comes to economic policies. So he is somewhat similar to a social conservative, which is a lot similar to what the CDU-CSU is today, which is a center-right party, but socially, they're not far right. They're not even right wing. They're very moderate when it comes to social issues. The Green Party, they're center left to left wing, but it's not a huge deviation between any of these three major parties. The only deviations are really seen with the AfD and the left, and both of these parties are not really big parties for this election. So for Germany, they can vote for Chancellor and most likely Olaf Scholz. And as of now, Olaf Scholz seems like he will be the next Chancellor of Germany. But no matter who wins, German politics will essentially stay the same. The only way German politics gets a shake is if the AfD actually gains a lot of seats like they did in 2017 when they shook the political world by actually having an entrance into the Bundestag. But in 2021, it seems like they're at best going to stay with the amount of seats that they currently have. They're currently polling at around 12%. And if we look at the last election, they won by they got 12.6% of the vote. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. This video is now adjourned. We will have, I guess, an aftermath video of the German elections. But until then, we'll see you in the next one.